and so am I.
Awesome.
Cool. We'll kick this thing off.
Okay, so we'll kick off. Hello, everyone listening to our recording. Unfortunately, we aren't recording live, but this is going to be a wonderful resource. So we do encourage you to comment below any questions, as we will be available to answer them when we upload this.
Yeah. So I suppose a bit of an introduction first is probably ideal. So my name is Rob. I am an exercise physiologist. I've also got a background in myotherapy. And I suppose the reason that I was really keen on doing a presentation like this, or it was meant to be a face-to-face workshop, but we couldn't do that, was because meditation and mindfulness both of them have really shaped who I am today over the last, probably 10 or so years, or maybe even longer. So the first time I actually encountered something like meditation was was actually going back a very long time ago. It was actually in year 10 psych. My teacher was quite progressive at that time, and she actually introduced us to that. So that was my first experience. And I think I found it was probably just boring, really. I don't think I was doing it very well. It was just me basically sitting with my eyes closed and just thinking about stuff as normal. But that was my first introduction, and then from there, it was a very long time after where I actually just had this sort of chance encounter with just becoming mindful, kind of by accident. Okay, it was just almost the best way I could describe it is that the filter, my thinking filter, was just removed, and I was just like suddenly seeing stuff, as it was in the very present moment. And this was just randomly, like I was just walking home from school one day, and I was just like, "What was that?" And I later found out over the next couple of years that this is what Eckhart Tolle talks about in The Power of Now, his book. Which is a really great resource if people haven't read it. So I'd highly recommend that. There's a couple of more resources at the back of this, or the end of this presentation. But from there, that really just got me interested. And then, I suppose, as they say, the rest is kind of history. I've just, stayed interested and learned more. So that's me around this. And I know that Raya has also a very special passion for this area as well. So why don't you tell us a bit more about that, Raya?
Yeah, of course. So I actually honestly don't remember when I became interested in this topic, to be honest. I had chronic fatigue syndrome myself as a teenager, and that was a really rough time. And looking back, I really could have used a technique like this. And I think in some ways I did, but in other ways I definitely didn't and could have used it. So going through my process of bettering my health, I began to discover all of the different elements of health. What is physical health, what is emotional and mental health, and everything that falls under those brackets and outside of that as well. So I became really, really passionate about health, and I went into becoming a health coach. So I suppose that's probably where I learned a little bit more. From there, I went into doing my yoga and meditation diploma through what's labelled as the School of India here in Melbourne. And that was probably my first encounter of really traditional meditation and mindfulness and all of the varying degrees of that. And it was such a beautiful thing to do or to get good at. But it was a very long process, especially for my personality. So it was something that I became really passionate about. And since then, I've been doing my Bachelor of Exercise Scientist, as well as Masters of EP, and all the while looking at, the physical body and how that works. The mental health and emotional health pops up absolutely everywhere. And I think, especially in this day and age, mindfulness is a huge component, or should be a huge component, of everyday life. And the more that I saw this imbalance in personally myself, and then in others, it was something that I became more and more passionate about. And when we were sitting here deciding who was going to do the mindfulness workshop, it was something that I think you and I were both super, super excited. I was like, yes, definitely. We love talking about that. Let's do
straight
it.
Up.
So you'll notice today that we might go off on little tangents. We might talk about our personal experience. Yeah, I say might, we definitely will. But we hope that you resonate with some of it, and that out of this, we hope that you take a lot away from it in regard to what mindfulness is and why it matters.
Cool. Thanks for that summary. So you're actually going to lead a bit of an intro meditation to get us, I suppose, mindful. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I am. So
yeah, over to you then.
So basically we thought that we might give it a bit of a practice. We'll give it a go, and then we'll talk about why you're here, and we'll talk about mindfulness. So the first part is, obviously it's a little bit difficult to do mindfulness or any form of meditation via a computer when you can't quite connect with that person the same way. So we're going to give it a go, and you might have difficulty, and that's really okay. What we're trying right now, we want to do without judgment. We just want to see how we go with it. Okay. So anyone who is listening, I encourage you to just close your eyes. And firstly, Rob, you're going to do it because I can see you. So I'm going to instruct you. Firstly, I want you to close your eyes, and I first want you to just connect with your body. So firstly, connecting with our breath. I just want you to feel the rhythm of your breath. I don't want you to change anything about it, but I just want you to become conscious that it's there and that you're listening to it. When we're aware of our breath, we can do this for a short amount of time, or we can do it for a longer amount of time. And the idea is to just settle and connect with how our body's flowing. Our breath can tell us a lot. It can tell us how relaxed we are, how revved we are, and sort of what's happening within our body. So I always start by just gently checking in with our body, because that can tell us a lot. Next, I'm going to get you to open your eyes, and we're going to practice being mindful. So ideally, I don't want you to look at the computer screen. All you need is to listen to the sound of my voice. I want you to begin to connect with the things around you. So you'll be in a space, you might be in a room. There's obviously going to be a computer or phone in front of you listening to this. And I just want you to observe what is around you. So what elements of the room can you see that bring you happiness? And for some of you, you might say this out loud, what you're identifying. For some of you, you might talk it within your head and your mind. But firstly, I just want you to scan the room and be present. Just really notice the room. You might be in your bedroom or a lounge room, and you might be in a room that you're in all of the time, but we get really used to being in that space and we don't really notice as much. So firstly, I just want you to notice what in the room brings you happiness. You might scan and see a photo, you might scan and see a pet, you might scan and see a book that you're in the middle of that you can't wait to get back to. So what in the room brings you happiness? Next up, we're going to scan the room and see what we can find that brings us safety or calmness. So you, again, just looking around the room and just observing what is around you, just really actually looking to see. This might be difficult for some. There might be a bit of a block, and that is completely okay. We are not expecting to have a list of 10 or a list of 20. We are literally just looking at what we can observe and what we can see. We might stay on something that makes us feel safe and calm, and we might just focus on that, or we might continue to scan the room to see what else we can see. Certain emotions might pick up as we see things, both good and bad ones, and that's okay. We are just at the moment scanning around us. So we've looked at things that make us happy. We've looked at things that make us feel safe or calm. Next up, I want you to look at the things that bring a sense of contentment. So again, falling in line with the safety and calm, but is there anything in the room that makes you feel content, just settled and overall okay? Good. There might be a bit of difficulty around this. As I said, you'll notice some emotions might pop up, and that's okay too. But the idea is that right now we are just being conscious of doing one thing and being mindful of one thing. Our mind might wander and we might be thinking about another room or another day or another person or another thing, and that's okay. But the idea is that we've been slowly coming back to the same focus. So we focused on looking for happiness, we then looked for safety and then calm, and we looked for contentment. So all focusing on looking at or being mindful of a particular type of thing or a particular type of focus, and bringing our focus or attention back to where we are and what we're doing. Okay. So we're going to take a break there, and we're just going to sort of come back to where we are, and you're welcome to come back to the screen itself. With that, and you're going to slowly be coming out of it and slowly letting your mind just come back to being present, to what I'm saying and what we're doing, and obviously what we're about to do in terms of learning. But mindfulness can be a little bit of everything, and mindfulness can be really fun and quirky, and it can be really quiet and calm, and I think it's really important that we try it in different ways. So our opening meditation today was just to bring awareness to where we are in time and space, what is around us, and really notice things and really just be where we are. You might have noticed that your mind was wandering, and that's completely okay. And that's maybe one of the reasons that you're listening to us and watching this presentation. And in saying that, you're human. I think we'll go into it, but our minds wander, and that's okay too. So for now, I just want you to think about what you may have taken away from those few minutes. What was comfortable, what maybe wasn't so comfortable, what did you notice about yourself? And we'll come back to reflecting that a little bit later. But for now, we're going to move on. Does that sound okay, Rob?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks for that, Raya.
Awesome. Nice. So I think we really should go into why we're all here. And I think Rob and I really resonated with this photo, and the question of the answer that you're looking for is basically, what is mindfulness? And I think I have an answer, and I can elaborate, and I can go and go and go and go, but this photo or this image really shows it. Your mind can be full and chaotic and have a lot happening, or you can be mindful, and that means you're present to the space around you. So basically, to understand mindfulness or what is mindfulness, one of the first steps, we need to understand how our brains actually normally operate. So our brain generates a stream of thoughts in our consciousness, and basically it does this on autopilot. And the example I give is, have you ever driven somewhere and then gotten there and not really remembered the drive there? And you know that you were there and you're present, you know that you were looking out for other cars and that you were safe, but you were on autopilot getting yourself from A to B. Autopilot can happen without us noticing, and basically we can sort of get stuck inside these thoughts without noticing that as well. So basically you can see that this particular image shows two different individuals, and one is seeing what is right in front of them, and one is also seeing that because it's right in front of them, but their mind is there and probably in 10 other places at the same time. So one's not necessarily paying attention, they're stuck inside their head, and the other is actually being present to the moment, seeing the space around them and looking and observing. Okay, so basically mindfulness is the opposite of mindlessness, and mindlessness is the autopilot we were just talking about. Basically, mindfulness is the awareness that is free from distraction and judgment. Okay, So it is maintaining a moment by moment awareness of our thoughts, our feelings, any bodily sensations, our surrounding environments. And generally, we want to look at this through a gentle and nurturing lens. And I think this is sometimes where we have a little bit of difficulty. But to summarize it, basically mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not necessarily overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on and happening around us. So yeah, I think that summarizes it nicely, but if you do have any questions, do feel free to comment below. But Rob, I think you've got a little bit to add to that too.
Yeah, no, I think you summarized it really, really perfectly. You know, our mind is generally speaking out of control and we're not even aware of it.
Yep.
And, you know, that's not a bad thing. It's just what our mind does. It's what it was built to do. Okay. But mindfulness is kind of like a superpower. And it really is, because not many people do it. So it is very much a superpower to have if you can do it and no one else can do it. But it can really bring you into that present moment, and we'll discuss a bit more as to why that's important, you know, moving forward into this presentation. And in fact, I'll bring up the next slide, which is probably a quote that a lot of people will have heard of or be familiar with. It's by Rene Descartes. And just FYI, he also came up with the first thinking or understanding around what pain is as well. So you can just, not for this presentation, for another time. But for this quote to be true, it really, it states that, like, we are nothing without our thoughts, okay? So he's saying that because you think, that creates your existence. And we've actually come a long way since that, okay? So mindfulness actually proves that that's quite wrong. So, I mean, just a quick question for you, Raya, and anyone else watching. So how many hours a day do you think you spend thinking?
Cool. Every minute of
Probably all of them.
like
Yeah, all of them, exactly.
Yeah, that's a bit confronting.
Yeah. So here's a few stats, and no PowerPoint presentation is complete without them.
Of course.
So unlike many of the stats that I just say off the top of my head, these ones are actually real. You would never know that my stats are usually made up. But yeah, look, it's estimated by neuroscientists that we actually have about between 60 and 80,000 thoughts per day. So that equates to about 2,000 to 3,000 or 3,500 thoughts per hour. 80% of those thoughts people identify as being negative, and most of them are repetitive. So we're actually thinking the same thing over and over, and that's a negative thing. So just sort of let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
Like, that's really big. So I'm actually really glad that the previous quote is not correct. You know, we've progressed past that now. Because if we were just identified purely based on our thoughts, we'd be probably pretty miserable. And to be honest, I think people who you know, don't know or have never practiced meditation, you know, a lot of them are quite susceptible to low mood and other mental health conditions, probably largely because of that. And that's also why you know, psychologists are using or prescribing meditation and mindfulness so much now, because it is such a powerful tool, and that's why we're focusing on it so much as well. Now, I do want to be clear, like, there's nothing, this is not like bagging out thoughts. Like, thinking is really important. That's how we come up with great ideas. That's how we are able to do what we're doing right now via the internet. Someone thought of this and came up with it. Well, it's not that thinking is bad, but you don't want to be out of control. You know, you don't want to constantly be identified with your thoughts, because a lot of them are wrong, and most of them are negative. So yeah, it's the whole idea around, you know, mindfulness and meditation is to become aware rather than inside or identified with your thoughts. So you can actually create some space. In fact, Yes, this quote is one of my favorites from one of my favorite books. So I'm just going to read it out. So between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that's from a book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning, which is brilliant, highly recommended, and it's in our resources slide at the end of this. But essentially this is essentially what mindfulness is, the purpose of it. It's about creating that space, that moment between having a thought and taking action. It buys you sort of time, and it allows us to be observers or witnesses to what's going on around us. And it allows us to consider much more mindful responses to things. Now, this could be just the way that you act, the way you interact with others, could just be the things that actually go through your head as well. So I like this sort of analogy, like our consciousness is kind of like an ocean and our thoughts are the waves. So, waves come and go, and they can be really fast and they can be really, really big and powerful, or they can be small and calm. But, the waves are just sort of transient. Our consciousness is always there. That's the ocean. So, and it's through mindfulness that we can sit more in just the ocean and let the waves pass. Yeah.
That's really powerful.
I thought so. So, yeah, as I said before, like the aim of meditation is not really about becoming a fantastic meditator. It's not about having even a meditation practice every day. It's, the same way that we brush our teeth, that's the aim of that is not to be fantastic at brushing our teeth. It's a means to an end, okay? It's so we have great tooth health or oral hygiene, and that's important all the time. So meditation is kind of like, I suppose, mental cleanliness, I guess, or mental hygiene. Mental hygiene, I'm going to go with that.
I love it.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a really big and powerful concept to wrap your head around. I think the idea is that we have to meditate, and I think we all have these general misconceptions or barriers around meditation. And when you put it so simply like that we just need to practice being present, and that being aware that there are waves in an ocean and there are thoughts in our consciousness. I think it's it is simplified. We have simplified it, but it's a really big concept to get a hold of, because I think for a long time, and here is where we could go on a tangent and we won't, but for a long time mental wasn't a consideration. It was all about your physical health and all about exercising and eating healthy, which is obviously huge, and we wouldn't be who we are without that big belief. But I think over the past decade and couple of decades, they're beginning to understand that our mental and emotional health is huge. Absolutely, it's so powerful and so important.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, which is basically a medicine for our mind. It is.
Oh no, we've lost audio, Raya.
Can you still hear me?
Oh, now I can. It must have just been an internet lag. That's all good.
Okay.
Just probably say that bit one more time.
Yeah, of course. So looking at this is a concept of just identifying that our mental hygiene, I'm gonna run with that one, Rob, is really, really important, and that mindfulness can be medicine for the mind, and being able to come into a practice of that, it could be life-changing in some sense or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get right into sort of the practical benefits of
Yes.
Mindfulness and meditation. But, this stuff has now been just studied so much. There's just thousands of studies on this sort of on mindfulness and meditation. And just off the top of my head, a few things that I'm remembering it, it's been shown to sort of to reduce pain. It's been shown to reduce anxiety and depression, improve cognitive function. So that could be brain fog for a lot of people. And it actually increases the density of parts of your brain that are related to learning and memory. Okay. So, and also emotional regulation. So these are things that, you know, as we age, there's risk of getting sort of dementia and Alzheimer's. Like meditation could actually be part of the therapy for that. So that's, you know, again, I keep saying that this is why we bang on about this stuff. It's just, you know, it's such a simple, accessible thing to do to improve your health.
Yeah, and coming back to it, it can be a superpower.
Yeah, yeah, I'm going with that too. It's definitely a superpower.
I like it.
Yeah,
we're running with it.
All right, so how do we be mindful?
All right, so I think this is obviously the reason that people are listening to us now. And one of the first things that I tell people when looking at the idea of connection of mindfulness is it is like going to the gym. It is like learning a new language. It's training a muscle, and it requires a lot of practice, and it requires a little bit of commitment as well. And just, you know, wanting to give it a go and giving it a good go, I think is a big thing, because we'll talk about it a little bit more later on, but we have some misconceptions and some barriers around them. And sometimes that is the reason that we don't do it. And really, when we know the benefits of it, and when we simplify it to realize how easy it can be in our lives, there really is no reason why it shouldn't be there. So that is this slide summed up to a T. It is as simple as it can be. Who do you need? You need yourself. What do you need? You need to focus on mindfulness, not mindlessness. So, and not having your mind being full either. So it is the practice of finding that middle ground, of being able to connect with mindfulness. When we should be doing it, ideally we should be doing it daily. There's no reason not to. If we get into a really good rhythm or practice behind it that suits us and our personality and our circumstances, there's no reason why we shouldn't do it daily. When you can do it anywhere, that is the point of it, is you can be mindful absolutely anywhere and at any time, and it can actually really come in handy in many different examples. So I think that simplifies it and summarizes it, but people get to the how, and the how is what they have the difficulty with, and this is where they get stuck. Basically, they know they may have the tools, they know they probably should practice mindfulness, but it's generally the how that gets people. And I probably think this is the one thing that I have that chat with people about. It's not selling them on the idea of mindfulness. I think the research speaks for itself, but it's speaking to the individuals and getting them to have that awareness to have a look at in what way they feel comfortable to connect with it. And I think it's the how that everyone gets caught up in. Would you agree with that, Rob?
Yeah, I definitely think so. You know, most people that I speak to, my patients, they know about mindfulness. They know about meditation. They might have even tried it once or twice. And a lot of the one comment I always get is, "Yeah, I tried that once and it didn't work." But yeah, it's again, they know of it. They've probably tried it. It's just sort of how to make it work. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think when we really look at it, it's setting aside a time and actually just giving it a good go. Some may consider this boring, and we're definitely going to talk about that too. Some might have that difficulty, but I think it's really important that we just have a look at how it might fit in our life. So set aside time to practice. How can you facilitate that? Do you need a space to try? Do you need tools like an app?
Apps are great. Apps, I use apps all the time.
Amazing. Yeah, I think even the best person at mindfulness or meditation, they're still going to use resources, because it's not about doing the same thing every time. And I think that's really important. Yeah. And I think part of what we need to do is sort of allow space for resistance or uncomfort or boredom or restlessness or wandering thoughts or active thoughts. I think we actually need we need to allow that space to go, actually, you know what, it's not going to be flawless the first time, and sometimes you'll connect with it and other times you may not. And especially with the many, many different types of mindfulness or meditation, and when we're first get going with it, it's really important that we allow for space to suck at it initially. And I think that was a big change between my practice, was allowing time to do it badly. And I think I really like mindfulness, or using the analogy of clouds. I think everyone's done cloud watching. Everyone has laid on the grass or ground somewhere and looked up at the sky and looked at the clouds, and they've interpreted what they can see, the pictures, and they just watch them move. And for some reason, we can be really good at that. It's fun, it's easy, it's interesting, it's engaging. But that's actually mindfulness. You're being present and you're just observing something without judgment, without confrontation or worries about it. It is just observing what you see and letting it float by. And I really like that idea that mindfulness is like cloud watching. We observe our thoughts and we let them pass.
Yeah, so the sky is, again, your consciousness, and the clouds are really just the thoughts, and they just come and go.
Yeah.
And it can be really, really quite stormy, or it can be a nice, beautiful sunny day like you've got there on the screen. And just a couple of things, like on the restlessness, like that's, you know, I still suck at meditation, you know, like there's heaps of times when I try to do it, and I have been trying to do it every day. I don't always succeed at this, but like, even with that amount of practice, I will, you know, sit down to do my meditation and my brain will just be out of control, like I said before, okay?
Yeah.
And it will be restless and I won't be able to get comfortable. But it's, you know, it's the noticing of that and allowing space for that. That is the practice. That is being mindful. Yeah. It's not the absence of that. It's, you know, we see, I think a lot of people get this image in their mind of, you know, monks who are the masters of meditation, and they are sitting there really peaceful up in their mountain cave.
Yeah.
But that's not really the reality of it, I guess. The reality is that most of the time, our brains are very restless, and mindfulness is uncomfortable, not just at the start. You know, it sometimes it's not even enjoyable. Sometimes you're just like, that was a real effort.
Yeah.
But I suppose just like, you know, training for a sport, you could be an elite athlete and your training is still going to be hard. And I think a lot of also people get into, I suppose some people can fool themselves, you know, some people who are really good meditators can fool themselves into thinking that they don't need to practice anymore. But that's kind of like an elite athlete saying, well, I'm pretty good at tennis now and I'm winning all the stuff. I'm winning all the championships and Grand Slams. So I don't need to practice anymore. It doesn't really work like that. So it's this constant thing.
Yeah, and I always like to use the analogy of, it's kind of like going on a diet. A lot of people think it's all or nothing. It's like you have to do this and be ridiculously strict and stick to this regime of food. And in order to be mindful and do mindfulness, you have to be a monk in a cave. And it's everything in between that. And it is the connection of sometimes doing it badly and sometimes doing it amazingly and giving yourself a pat on the back of going, hey, we nailed that today. And I think it's not black and white. It's all of the gray space in between. And I honestly think that's where the difficulty is that we try for the all or nothing. And if we can't do the all, then why give it a go?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to move on because we're going on that tangent.
Exactly. So just the important note that I always like to remind people is emotions will pop up and ideally come and go, but sometimes we might ruminate on some. So mindfulness requires the art of self-compassion and kindness. We need to be able to look after ourselves during this time and not be self-critical and not tell yourself off that you did badly at that mindfulness, because that is the opposite of what we're going for. So sometimes we need to do a little bit of work in terms of self-compassion and kindness, and this might be a separate practice on its own. But the idea is that mindfulness requires observation without judgment, and sometimes we can be a little bit self-critical. So we do want to try and be careful with that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And that sort of brings us into these misconceptions,
Yeah.
which we had a lot of fun writing. Because I
Yes.
think with each misconception, I was kind of thinking of real examples. Real people who have said these sorts of things
Yeah.
to me. So we will go through them together, I guess. So,
Yeah.
what are your
So,
thoughts on the fact that mindfulness is boring?
oh, this is the one that you hear the
Hmm.
most, I
Yeah.
think. And I think that, like, you're doing it wrong. If mindfulness is boring, you're not doing it. And I know that's really harsh and really straightforward, but if it's done properly, then you actually can't have the symptom or the response of boredom.
Yeah. So, I mean, boredom is really a symptom of actually not being present.
Yeah.
Standing in line. Let's just take standing in line, okay? So, because yeah, that's something that's really quite annoying sometimes, especially in you're a hurry. It can be really boring just stand in line, but that's usually because your mind is wanting to be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But other times, like people often say, geez, I really, when I'm relaxed, I really like to people watch. Well, now's the time to
Yeah.
people watch.
Yeah.
Now's the time to sort of pay attention to what's going on around you and watch all the other people being mindless while
Yeah.
you're being mindful. It's quite enjoyable. So let's bust that one.
Yep. Busted.
Yep.
Done.
Yep. Don't
So
like being left alone with your thoughts.
yeah, and look, I think that sort of comes back to what I was just saying in terms of that being a little bit self-critical, or not being fantastic with our self-compassion and kindness, and I think that is a really difficult space to be in.
Yep.
But I do think that mindfulness can actually help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the remedy, or part of the remedy, is to become more mindful and lean into those thoughts and feelings of agitation.
Yeah.
And sort of come at it with more curiosity rather than judgment.
Yeah, for
It's really
sure.
right there. Mindfulness does nothing and it doesn't work. That's, I suppose, for that, it comes back to expectations, I think. It's what have you heard about mindfulness and meditation? What is it that you're actually expecting? So this is, like I said before, I get people who say, yeah, I tried meditation once or twice and it didn't work. And if you dig deeper, they were under the impression that their pain would just suddenly go away, or their fatigue would lift, and they'd suddenly have this be a ball of energy. It's like a sport, it requires ongoing maintenance, it requires ongoing work. And at the start, it kind of sucks a lot. So it's the long game that we're playing with mindfulness, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not going to do it twice and anxiety be gone. And
No.
I think it's being realistic with what you think of it as a tool, in what way you're going to use it, because if you're going into it for the wrong reasons, then you're going to come out of it with a different idea of what it is.
Yeah. How about people who find it scary?
So yeah, I think this one's a big one, because I think that's quite common. In one side of it is that people worry they're going to do it wrong. I think that's one side of it being scary, and in that case, obviously we know that you can't really do it wrong if you're giving it a go and if you're practicing and trying. But I think probably they're worried about the response of it, or what happens when they're left alone with their thoughts, not necessarily mindfulness itself. Like, mindfulness can't be scary, but I think it's the response that may be.
Yeah, and I think, it's about sort of, maybe, I think I've come across people who just sort of feel their own judgment, or feel like they're being judged by others because they're meditating, because it's something that's weird, or, spiritual or religious. And that sort of leads into the next one there, like, does it have anything to do with religion? Look, it's been used in probably every religion throughout the history of time, in some form or another. I suppose the most common thing you can think of is praying. Like, that is, I suppose, a form of concentration and thinking about one thing, focused concentration. So that's one example. But inherently, mindfulness and meditation are not religion. They're not bound to any sort of spirituality at all. You don't need to use candles and incense and be in a cave or anything like that. It's just observing your mind and the contents of your consciousness, really.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to that. I think that's exactly right. Everyone comes to it with their own backgrounds and beliefs, and
it certainly can be spiritual and religion, or
yeah, of course,
a kind of religion, but it certainly doesn't have to be at all. Yeah. Time.
So what if I don't have time?
Literally, you can be mindful in a moment, in less than a breath. It's about just coming into the present moment, especially when you feel yourself getting angry about something that someone said, or if you hear some really, really shocking news. That moment, and like I said before on that previous slide about it creating space, it's really just those moments. That's sort of what we're aiming for. But meditation itself can be done in as little as 5 minutes. I've done like a 2-minute meditation between patients.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's longer is better for me, but like it's better than nothing.
Yeah, 100%. And
2 minutes.
Some of my best meditation has been on public transport, on a train. Or people watching, or in my peak times of stress and peak times of need of just connecting with my breath and settling my state down. Mindfulness can be done at any time and take however long you need it to take in that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the last one, so someone who's tried meditation but they just can't shut their mind off.
Look, this was me. I thought that meditation meant that you weren't allowed other thoughts. You were doing it wrong if other thoughts came in, and that if your mind wasn't completely quiet, as if nothing was happening, that's initially what I thought meditation was. And oh my God, was that hard. Trying to practice that, you could go insane. And I did honestly practice that, and I was really surprised that I couldn't get anywhere with it. I was like, I'm putting my mind to this. I'm putting so much effort into this. Why can't I get my mind to shut off? And I think that's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it actually defies the point.
Exactly.
The point of meditation is actually not to, clear your mind and have no thoughts, because that's, I'd say it's probably possible, but it's, extremely difficult. Even if you just sort of think about just focusing on your breath, guaranteed within probably, if we're being really honest, 5 seconds, a thought's going to pop into your head. So, and that's coming from someone who, I've been doing this for quite some time. But the point of meditation is not to clear your head. It's actually to observe what is actually in your head. And if it's full of thoughts, then just acknowledge that. That's all.
Yeah.
That's the practice. That's it.
Yeah,
all right. So now we've got Barrett. Sorry, did you say something?
No, I completely agree.
Cool. Great. Shall we move on?
We shall.
Okay. So barriers, that's kind of a good lead in as well.
Definitely.
So there are lots of reasons why meditation can be made difficult, and mental and physical health probably at the top of the list. So, when you are in low mood or in quite a panicked state, or just not feeling very motivated, it's really difficult to go, I'm going to just do some meditation because that'll fix everything. But it's a little bit like exercise. We know that both mindfulness and exercise are great for us mentally, but when you are in not a great space, it can just be hard, and it can actually take generating some willpower, I guess, to try and overcome that. And if you're really struggling, then just seek some help. Me and Raya will definitely have a chat to you about how to overcome this sort of stuff. And same likewise with exercise. Like we can, we're here to literally get people past their barriers. That's why our job exists.
But I think also one of the biggest important components is acknowledging the barriers are there and that they're normal. And I think when we were coming up with this, we thought a lot about it. And I think the barriers that we listed, they were there on that page within 3 seconds. It's like, wow, we're, like, we hear these all the time. We see these all the time. We've experienced them. Yeah. And I think a lot of people just go, oh, well, if it's that easy, shouldn't I just be able to do it? And I think acknowledging that barriers are going to be there and that they're okay and that we work alongside them rather than resisting or ignoring, I think that's a big component of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So out of this, I'm just very mindful of time. Which ones would be your biggest ones? Let's just sort of go through that one.
Look, I think probably what we're covering today is education. People, I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers, because there's a lot of supportive strategies of using mindfulness for your mental health, or the idea of, mindfulness might be wasting time. There's a lot of support out there to say it's the opposite of that. I think you identified earlier expectations, and I think another one alongside that is probably education. What do you know about mindfulness, and has that impacted on your ability to give it a go, or your ability to perform it? Because that'll pair with your expectations as well. But if you don't know it, you're not going to be comfortable enough to try it and to know what barriers may arise, what misconceptions may be there, and actually how to work around that. So I think knowing a lot about it as a practice, I think education is a big component of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's probably one of the biggest ones that I see. And I think the one for me is probably a combination between type A personality, so wanting to do it perfectly, and also needing to constantly be distracted. So I've come across this a few times where people say, yeah, I've actually really tried to give meditation a go, but I feel so uncomfortable, just because I'm just used to doing things all the time. And that therein sort of lies the problem. And that's often why they're actually seeing us for pain and fatigue reasons. Because they are that type of personality that is just go, 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 rush, rush, rush. And that really feeds into just the way that our society is at the moment. It promotes, perpetual doing stuff, basically. Its value is productivity. And if you're having downtime, you're sort of seen as lazy or wasting time. Yeah. But, the biggest thing that I want people to take away from this here is that mindfulness is actually productive time, because it's an investment now for your future self.
Yeah. Could not agree more.
All right. Next up. So this is, we've got a series of slides here that sort of speak to how to apply mindfulness a bit more practically in using the tools and strategies that we provide in clinic around pacing, sleep, setback planning, and stress and anxiety. So we will go through them now.
Yeah, and I think just a side note, you don't have to be a patient of ours. We are keeping this information as generic as possible so that you can all relate to it. And I think this one in particular, mindfulness and pacing, I think it's bread and butter of stabilizing our condition, management of our health, and progression of things. So I think mindfulness is a huge element to pacing, or can be a huge element to pacing, because mindfulness helps us check in with our body and actually be mindful. Do we need to slow down? Do we need a rest? Do we need to swap tasks? Are we aware of how we're feeling, or are we ignoring, and are we on autopilot? And I think being able to identify and connect with our body and being mindful can actually help us strategically get through our day.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think the biggest thing that I would like, my patients to know in going into pacing is that mindfulness can be a tool to actually, like you said, be aware of where your symptoms are at, how much energy you've got left, and trying to, it'll actually help you minimize flare-ups or setbacks, basically, through pushing through or doing too much.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it allows you to check in and see how you're coping. But it also gives you respite in the sense that sometimes it allows you to rest mentally and physically and just recharge in the way that you need to. But it can also help in terms of forward planning, being proactive and looking at our needs and being mindful rather than being reactive because we're on autopilot.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So how about sleep? How does mindfulness help with sleep?
I think obviously it can play a huge role, and we know that it can, the good balance between sleep and rest then impacts on our capacity to further pace our day and manage our energy. So looking at mindfulness, a lot of people know it quite commonly as a tool to help us wind down and assist in the onset of sleep. So I know that for me personally, when I'm in peak stress mode, mindfulness is one of the tools that will help me get to sleep faster rather than my mind just going and going and going for an hour to 2 hours. So for me, it helps with sleep onset, which also minimizes that restlessness sensation or symptom that we're experiencing, which can improve on our ability to fall asleep, but also potentially the quality of our sleep too.
Yep, definitely. And I think one of the best tools for this is to download a couple of apps. Or an app or two, and they're listed in our resources slide further down. But I too use like a sleep meditation app most nights, and probably 9 times out of 10 it gets me to sleep, in no time at all. The rare occasions is when I'm really, really wound up, but that's probably because I haven't actually been practicing, meditation and as much as I should, really, during the day. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, because I think it's a big tool that can improve our state of rest throughout the day and then obviously of an evening. But I think for me, a big component of that was actually improving my relationship with sleep, being able to help me get into more of a settled state around sleep so that even if the quality of sleep wasn't fabulous or I was a bit more restless that evening, mindfulness was able to benefit me in a way that I was able to settle and get to sleep a bit easier or stay asleep a little bit better. And I think a big perk around mindfulness and sleep is that you can actually do this instead of scrolling your phone or watching TV. I think we know that light and screens impact on the hormone melatonin that's released to tell our brain to go to bed. So in doing mindfulness instead, it actually helps us physiologically get to sleep as well.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point about technology. Yeah, for sure. So how about setbacks and symptoms? I know this is an area that, well, you wrote this slide, so you go.
All right. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the photo, and kind of look at that and go, really? Well, that's a bit random. And basically in my mind, I looked at this photo and saw if you utilize all of the different strategies, mindfulness being one of them, that's what's going to get you out of a setback. So I think it's not just time and it's not just rest and waiting to feel better. We actually have to work to manage our symptoms, and we have to work to get ourselves out of a setback and managing a flare up. So it is a combination of things, and I do believe that it's teamwork and I think mindfulness is a big component of that. So I actually really resonated with this photo, and I think it's really important to discuss because mindfulness isn't the key to your health, but it's going to be a component that's going to help you manage your health. And being clear on what it is and what it does and our expectations around it is really, really important. The same way that we've addressed any other component of our health. We know that diet isn't going to fix our life. And we know that exercise isn't going to fix all of our problems. It is a component. We know that we need to eat healthy. We need to exercise right. We need to sleep well. We need to look after ourselves. They are in combination is what our body needs to live a healthier life and manage or minimize symptoms. And I think mindfulness plays a big role in that. And I think that's obviously a tangent that we could go on, but something that's really important to us is identifying that this can be a key strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a couple of points here that really I wanted to touch on is the sympathetic overload. Like,
yes,
mindfulness has been like under sort of under MRI scanning, watching people meditate, they can actually see the sympathetic nervous system. So that's our fight, flight, freeze or faint nervous system, the one that sort of kicks in and perpetuates pain and fatigue. That actually gets down regulated when people are just in that moment, when they're actually being mindful and meditating. So it, like you said, it can actually provide that respite. And it sort of, educates your body to recalibrate and find that rest and digest, or that parasympathetic state. So I think they're really just, if you can take 10 minutes out of your day, you're actually having some parasympathetic or rest and digest, state for your body, basically. And that is going to assist in turning down that volume of whatever health condition you're dealing with. I don't think I can think of any health condition that's not somewhat reliant on the sympathetic nervous system in some way. So we can help downregulate that. It's going to be better for everything, basically.
Yeah. Correct. And I think it can be utilized as a big strategy to help us better manage symptoms whilst dealing with a chronic illness. And part of that is the volume of our symptoms, and that fight or flight response being so revved and turned up and edgy, and being able to try and encourage that rest and digest state. But part of that is needing it at the time. But if we're actually connected with mindfulness well, we can be aware of our symptoms, and we can potentially look at detecting setbacks early and look at prevention of setbacks alongside management of them too.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. The people who avoid setbacks, a lot of people will come into and see me and say, oh, I was so close to a setback. And I'll say, okay, well, what happened? And they just said, I just noticed that this is the way I was feeling, and I just needed to turn off, or I needed to have a rest break there. And that's what saved them. And without being mindful of how they were feeling, they would have missed it, and they would have just shot way overboard. So, yeah. So stress and anxiety is a really, really big one. And probably, meditation is probably, if there's one, thing that meditation does well, is actually reducing anxiety and stress. So anxiety really is, sorry, I think we were just a bit lagged there. We both wanted to speak.
Yes, you phrased a little bit.
Yeah.
I was going to say, no, I couldn't agree more. And the photo is a really good indication of that.
Yeah. So really, what is anxiety and stress? It's really just it's ruminating about, something that may or may not happen in the future, usually, okay? And it's where we sort of overanalyze. And I really love this graphic. It's like we've got the thing, and that sort of takes up this amount, like a sliver of this pie graph. And it's actually the worrying about that thing that is the bigger issue for you, that's causing more anxiety. So I often talk to people about, the problem being like this big, but their thoughts and feelings about it making it this big. And it's the ability to, notice your thoughts and not be in them, but actually observing them, that can shrink it down from this down to this. And it's not like, it doesn't, make that problem go away, okay? As that graphic shows, the thing is still there, but look how much smaller it is.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Like, anxiety or panic is basically that ruminating worry of what might happen in the future, and over analyzing that to the utmost degree. So, and this can be a really vicious cycle. So I think part of mindfulness is being able to be aware of that, and being able to shift our focus to be mindful to actually slow down that cycle when and if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, that's kind of that brings us to the end, and pretty much right on time. We did quite well with timing. But as I mentioned, yep, absolutely. As we mentioned earlier, we have, this is not even an exhaustive list of resources.
No.
It's just what I could come up with in the moment.
We kept ourselves to one slide.
Yeah, just as you can see, just the font was getting smaller and smaller. But there's apps here, there's books, there's people you can look up on social media. I'd like to point out you can actually do a 10-day silent meditation retreat. Just in case you're starting out on meditation, you want to just dive into it. That sounds, I don't know. Some people start there.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, not something I've done, but definitely on my bucket list. I'd also like to point out that yoga, or certain types of yoga, are on there as well. So my two favorites are Yoga Nidra and Yin Yoga, and I've also mentioned that we do yoga at the clinic at Active Health, because this is something that you, Raya, and Griya have a focus on. You really bring that mindful element to yoga.
And for me personally, I found that was probably my key into mindfulness, was actually being physically active and connecting with my physical body and observing that, and observing my thoughts and feelings and sensations around that, rather than sticking and trying to meditate and concentrate on the one thing. So there's probably a few that stick out for me here, and yoga is one that I'm definitely passionate about. I think apps are a really good idea. I'm a firm believer that you need to feel comfortable from the sound of the individual's voice and the language that they use. And there are that many that you can swap and change. And I think it's really important that you find the right one for you, that you enjoy listening to, because I think that's also where I've gone wrong in the past, is doing one for me because I think it's good for me, versus actually not loving the sound of that individual's voice. And if you're doing it before bed, you don't want to listen to someone that's not soothing you in some way. So I think apps are a big one. There's a couple books in here that obviously we love. Another one that I like to point out is that there's so many free resources around mindfulness. So there's a website called Future Learn. Even Monash University do free mindfulness courses. And I think this is something that, obviously we've spoken to you about what mindfulness is and how to do mindfulness, but if you're feeling like you're needing a little bit more, there's actually so many resources, and a really good one is freemindfulness.org. And if you go to the /download, there's so many. And I think
I'm not familiar with that.
I love that. So I think it's just allowing time and space to look into it a little bit more, and support what could be a really awesome, hobby's a bad word, but maybe habit.
Look, I definitely recommend starting off with some free ones, because there's heaps out there, and a lot of them do offer just a free trial period, or a free couple of sample meditations part of the apps, because that's where you're going to get your taster. And they are inherently paid apps. I suppose the more deeper ones, they're generally behind a paywall or something like that. But yeah, just sort of try some out, figure out whether you like the instructors and the voices. There's certain voices that just annoy me, and I can't be mindful with them. I'm like, no, just go with it. I'm meant to be mindful here. No, it just doesn't work. So just certain people's voices just get me. But likewise, I have some favorites to listen to as well. So in fact, my favorites are probably Buddhify and Waking Up. They're probably my two favorites to go to. What about you?
My go-to apps is Smiling Mind and Relaxed Melodies. So Smiling Mind, I love the language, and Relaxed Melodies is you're not listening to a voice. You get to choose different sounds that you'd like to listen to. So I like to create different spaces that I'm in. And that is the app that I use when I run a yoga class or a meditation class, because I like to set up the vibe of what's around. So I think that one I can tune based on my mood, which I think is really cool.
Beautiful. That's awesome. So this is a bit of a summary slide, and it's a bit of humor there as well. So just, how to achieve enlightenment in 6 easy steps. We have ripped apart, all the ins and outs of meditation. Actually, I lie. We haven't really. We've barely touched on it. So this is a huge topic, and we haven't even talked actually all about the different types of meditation, but we're not going to go there. This was about mindfulness. But essentially, it really is kind of, if you distill it down, It's just sit comfortably, close your eyes, or open. Sarah, our practice manager, has to meditate with her eyes open for reasons. You can ask her when you see her. Gradually become aware of the process of breathing. And when you notice that you're lost in thought, just observe it. Don't be judgmental, and just return to your breath. And that's the practice, pretty much. And try not to fall asleep.
With saying that, though, there are some ancient Indian Sanskrits that say it's okay to fall asleep. If you fall asleep, it means that you've reached peak enlightenment, that you are that relaxed that the next step is sleep.
I do that every night. See, I'm achieving peak. I should have written peak enlightenment and changed it, try not to fall asleep, to actually try to fall asleep.
But obviously in this population, we know that we need to be careful with our sleep structure and routines. So there is a time where we may need to avoid falling asleep, but you're not failing if you fall asleep either.
No, not at all. Not at all. So in closing, I'm actually going to take a leader meditation now. So just a short one. So first up, I'd like you to try to find a comfortable position. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you're sitting on a chair or sitting on the floor or even laying down. It's all good. So just whatever your position is at the moment, just try to make it as comfortable as possible. And gently close your eyes if that feels like the comfortable thing to do, or you can just lower your gaze. And firstly, become aware of the feeling of just sitting or laying. And allow gravity to gently tug down on you and really sort of sink into that feeling. Feel the way gravity is making you be in contact with the surface underneath you. Feel the texture of that contact. Feel the contact between the floor and your feet, the chair and your legs, the backrest. And in this space, I'll get you to just take a few deep breaths. Just slowly in and slowly out. And now return your breath to normal, just let it go. It happens automatically, so just let it return to that. And try to become aware of where you feel your breath the most. So this might be in your chest, you might feel it rising and falling, or your abdomen. You might feel it kind of at the tip of your nose, or even the back of your throat. Doesn't really matter where, and you can change it. You can change it within this session or between sessions. Next time you might choose another spot. And there's nothing particularly special about the breath. It's just really a good place to focus. It's always with you. So you can access it whenever you want and wherever you are. but just find the most comfortable place where you can feel it. And if you've noticed that you're actually not focusing on your breath anymore and you're in thoughts, that's okay. Just notice that and come back to your breath. And each time a thought tugs at your attention again, and it will, just notice it. Without judgment, without frustration, without anger. Because this is the practice. This actually is what mindfulness is. It is the noticing of thoughts. And the next time you do notice a thought, actually look at the thought and see what happens. Then, once it dissolves, just move back to the breath. The point of this is to try to sharpen your mind in any situation in life. Our mind really is the thing that determines how you respond to stress and pain and really every other situation that you encounter in life. It's all you have. It's the basis of every single decision that we make and every single interaction that we have with others. So we want that tool to be as sharp as possible. And this is a way of achieving that. So in the last few moments of this meditation, just drop all efforts and start again. Start again as if this was the very first moment that you became aware of anything. And just see what happens. Okay, and start bringing your attention back to the room that you're in. There might be sounds coming from another room, another part of the house. There might be sounds outside. You might feel sensations in your body. And just when you're ready, in your own time, open your eyes. And now pay attention to how you're feeling. That's it. How are you feeling, Raya?
Good. I forgot that it was daytime and the sun was out, and I opened my eyes and I was like, how is it so bright? But no, I found that like I've got a blocked nose at the moment and I was still able to focus on my breath and really settle. I was able to really stay conscious to where I was and just being connected with my like mind and my breath and my body, which was really nice. And I think you lose a sense of time. It feels like it's been 2 seconds and 20 minutes and 2 years all at the same time. And I think that's a really beautiful feeling. And I think that's, one of my favorite parts.
Cool, mine too. And I actually lost track of time while I was doing that, and we way over.
I don't care. I loved it.
Yeah, me too. All right, so let's wrap it up. Any
Yes.
thoughts?
Any questions to anyone listening to this recording, do feel free to comment below or contact myself and Rob. We love this sort of stuff. If you need more resources, hit us up. This is exactly what we're here for. We, as Rob said before, we've only really just scratched the surface. So if we want to do the next level, we'll do that. And if this is something that you found really beneficial, then don't hesitate to share it. We're uploading this as a YouTube link so that you do have opportunity to share it with your loved ones. We're very, very passionate about this as a daily tool.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't hesitate to use it. And if you've taken one thing away from today, please just give it a go and try and have a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I think we want to know, what people's thoughts are on this. Is this stuff that you want to hear more about? Because this really determines on where we spend our energy at Active Health. If we find that people are going to engage with this sort of stuff, we will direct more energy there, and we will make this bigger and better. So, and offer many more services and tools and resources, and who knows, more workshops even around this sort of stuff.
Meditation class.
Yeah, I'm keen. I'm definitely keen. Let's talk more about that. Okay, let's wrap it up. We'll finish the recording there. Thanks everyone for watching. It's been great, and we'll see you around.
Yes, thank you everyone. It's been wonderful.